As you recall in Level 1, we covered some of the basic functions like the sum, average, and count. Well, here we're going to be covering those basic functions, but with the letter D in front of them, or what are known as the D functions, like DSUM, DAVERAGE, and DCOUNT. In other words, before it can perform that basic operation, like summing up, or averaging, or counting up a range of cells that contain data, it has to meet a certain condition or criteria. Now, these D functions sound a lot like what we just covered in the if functions, like the sum if, average if, and count if. Well, they're the same in that a condition has to be met before it can perform its basic operation. But the two major differences between the two, the first one is that the D functions can only count up, average up, or sum up a range of cells that are in column-like format, where the if functions can do it in both column and row. Another major difference is that, and this one favors the D function, is that the sum if function, if you want to view the condition that has to be met, you have to select the cell that contains the function and then either view it in the cell or up in the formula bar. Also, if you want to change the condition, you have to double click within that if cell, or like the sum if function, and to make the change within the function, whereas the D function, it doesn't contain the criteria within the same cell. It actually refers to another cell. Like up here, I'll have my conditions up here that I can view the conditions for books. It has to be greater than or equal to, let's say, $100,000 in sales. So I can easily view it there, the condition that needs to be met, and also make the changes there without having to select the cell that contains the function or double click within it to make changes. So you pick the one that works best for you, but before we get started, let me go ahead and scroll over to the right. To keep it simple so you can follow me, I'm going to go ahead and show you all three functions. I mean, once you get one, you'll get the hang of all the rest. But here I'm going to insert the DAVERAGE to average up my cells, the DSUM, and then the DCOUNT. So let's go ahead and do our first example. Let me scroll back. Let's say that I want to get the average total of all the employees who brought in consulting revenue, this category here, consulting, that was equal to or greater than $100,000. So to get started, I'm going to insert my function here, equals, type in DA for, well, the first couple letters for DAVERAGE. And it says here, it'll average the values in a column in a list or database that match conditions you specify. So let me go ahead and hit the tab key to pop open the function. I've got three arguments that I need to fulfill. First of all is the database. Now, when you're going through this and you're not quite sure what the argument is asking, well, the database we know, we can just come over here, click and drag and select it. That if you need more information, even if you're in the middle of typing in your function, just come up here and click on the Insert Function button on the formula bar. Click on it, pops it open. There's the function arguments. It's got our database selected here. Now when you select the database, be sure you select those column labels because it's got to compare those labels, and you'll see in a second, to our miniature criteria database. In any case, there's the database. That makes sense. If I come down here in the field, for that argument, what's it asking for? Well, it says down here, it gives us more help. This field is either the label of the column in double quotation marks, in other words, go ahead and type in consulting in quotation marks, or a number that represents the column's position in the list. So where's it at? What's its position? 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth column. I'd just rather go ahead and type in the number here. Then hit the tab key. Okay, where's its miniature criteria database? You can either go ahead and click on the collapsible dialog box button, click and drag and select it, and then hit enter to open it, or if you're just already there, delete it and you can still see it, click and drag and it'll still select it. Just use the collapsible dialog box buttons if you need more space and you can't get around it to try to move this window out of the way. Now notice that when it comes to selecting your criteria database, always select the first row that contains your labels and then one row down below it, because that's where you're going to set your criteria, okay? Go ahead and click OK. Now by default, because I have no criteria defined in my miniature criteria database, it's going to average the total for, well, the whole range here for the consulting column. And you can see when I select it, I can verify it by coming down here. The average says about 74,000. There it is, 74,000. Now when I come in here and I say, okay, for the consulting column, it's got to be anything that's greater than or equal to 100,000. Now be sure that when it comes to the greater than or less than symbols, if you also want to equal to, you always place the equals on the right hand side of those symbols, not the left hand side, otherwise Excel's going to freak out. Hit enter. Okay, let's see if this works. So what cells are greater than or equal to? I'm going to hold down the control key and select those cells. and it says the total down below is about 111,000, the average up here 111,000. Great, it works. Instead of averaging, it's going to be summing. So equals DSUM, dependent upon the condition. So hit the tab key. Now that we know what these arguments are, we can just go ahead and zip through this really fast. So the first one in bold is the database. Let me go over here, scroll over, click and drag and select it. Hit comma on the keyboard so I can go to the next argument. It says, okay, what's the field? Remember, in quotation marks or the number of the column that you want it to go ahead and, in this case, sum up the range that meets the condition, the one that's currently set here. Let's say it's going to be books. 1, 2, 3, column 3. Type in 3, comma, and then it says, okay, where's your criteria? Or the miniature database criteria. Go ahead and click and drag, select it, hit enter, pops it open. Now here's something you want to consider. Even though I have it, the condition or the criteria set to the consulting column, because this function is still referring to this miniature criteria database, you can actually have this add up another column that's based upon a condition or criteria for another column. Let's see if it makes sense. Let's see if it works actually. So we want to sum up all the cells in this column here based upon another column's condition or criteria that has to be greater than or equal to 100,000. So if we come over here in consulting, we know that. I'm control clicking each one of these is greater than or equal to 100,000. So if we come over here, it's based upon that criteria, then it's just these three cells here. Let me see if I can remember to every other one. Control click those, and then you'll see adding those three up down below 362,000. Let me scroll over 362,000. Okay, so keep in mind that you can go ahead and have conditions again for one cell or for one column when performing the basic operation in another. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Now for the count function or the DCOUNT with the condition. So equals D, type in the first couple letters. You have the count and the count A. Now remember, the count will count up a range of cells that contains numbers. The count A will count up the cells that are not empty. So choose your weapon. Hit the tab key. We've got our arguments here, the database. Click and drag to select, comma. We can choose a different field that we want to go ahead and count up. Maybe let's do the videos here. So it's going to be column 2. And you can see over here, even though I can't see my cell, this is in bold, which tells me that, well, without viewing the syntax, I'm just guessing if I type 2, and I can, of course, view up here in the formula bar to see where I'm at, comma, and there's criteria. Now we can go ahead and select the miniature database, hit enter, and okay, again, looking at in another column, it's going to base its counting upon that condition. So again, we can see if it makes sense. These three got to be greater than or equal to 100,000. So the videos over here, it'll count 3. Again, 1, 2, and 3. You can have multiple conditions or criteria. For example, for videos, I can go ahead and say, let's do less than or equal to 73,000. Hit enter. Let's see if this makes sense. So when it comes to consulting, looking in the consulting column, it has to be greater than or equal to 100,000. We know it's these three right here. Then when it comes to the video, it has to be less than or equal to 70,000. So what's less than or equal to 70,000? Well, we know it's this one, and that's it. So based upon that, if you just look over here, these are the only two that are being met for multiple conditions. So when you look at it, the average total is 119,000. Well, again, if you look at the sum, it's looking at column 3, the books, which is 146,000. And then the count, remember, it's looking at the videos, and the only thing that met both those conditions or criteria was only one. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.